Hello and welcome to the next episode of Stripping the Dipping podcast. I'm your unusual co-host, F1 Blag, and I have a really special guest today. This has been largely a Formula One driven podcast, motorsport podcast, but we happen to have extraordinary people, extraordinary human beings. And today I can rightfully say that not only do we have someone that now works in Formula One, we have someone that was a member of TeamGB during the London 2012 games. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Mr. Jack Bridge. Jack, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks very much for having me on the podcast. It's we've had this organised, I think, for a couple of months now. So yeah, it's good to finally come on the episode and come on the podcast and chat all things F1 and a little bit about my journey, how I got to where I am today.
Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, so Jack, it's first things first. We always ask these guests, how would you introduce yourself to someone you're just meeting? And to be fair, like, we know that you're not going to be up yourself, but for the purposes of explaining to people who you are, you can be a bit more descriptive than usual. So how would you introduce Jack Bridge?
So Jack Bridge is a retired Paralympic swimmer, keen sportsman, keen sport fanatic, who now has a vested interest in all things sport business, and in particular the business of Formula One. So my job now is I work in the commercial partnership team, and we help to manage the 32 sponsors of Formula One. So a huge privilege and a fully I do on every day I go into the office, I feel fully privileged to be part of such an amazing team and an amazing sport at an amazing time. And yeah, it's not been as plain sailing as I've probably made it out to be on my social media, but I suppose we can dig into that when we actually get into the pod.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely all for digging in, and appreciate that, as is the case with all of us, where we have an employer, we can't always say everything, but what you can tell us, I'm sure we'll be grateful for. Why don't we take it back to the start? You've talked about sport, both from a sport business perspective, the sport that you currently work in, but also the fact that you were a member of Team GB. So what's your first sporting memory, either participating or otherwise?
Sports played a massive part in my life. And I was surrounded by sport as a child. So my dad was a very keen volleyballer, but had trials for British volleyball. My mum was a keen hockey player back in Northern Ireland, and my family over in Northern Ireland are quite sporty themselves, so they're farmers. And their sport that they played was cricket. So every summer when I used to go over to see my grandparents in Northern Ireland, I'd usually spend most of the evenings at the cricket club throwing a cricket ball around and playing with a bat. And that's something that I kind of took with me, brought back over to England and started playing cricket at a young age. But I suppose, yeah, my first sporting memory probably would be holding a cricket bat or playing football in the side garden. So I had a really cool side garden at my parents' house, and it was almost like a little, pretty much like a small football pitch. So whenever I'd needed to burn off some energy as a young kid, I'd just run up and down the side garden, just playing football and pretending the end of the garden was the goal. So yeah, like I said, I constantly from a young age, I was always surrounded by sport and always had something in my hands.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to draw out the nature versus nurture there, given your family all around you were both doing sport, but clearly very good. Did you have any sporting heroes growing up? Obviously, apart from your fantastic parents.
Well, I suppose yes, in essence. So one of my first memories of watching live sport was watching my beloved Preston North End. So back in the day, I'm talking early 2000s, there was players, John Macken, Ricardo Fuller, those kind of players. Not that I expect anybody listening to the podcast would remember those players playing for Preston North End, but they were up there. And then a few years later, when cricket kind of started to boom in England, was Andrew Flintoff. So Andrew Flintoff is from Preston, which is the city I'm from. And watching him play in the Ashes in 2005 was absolutely unbelievable. Just to think someone who was born less than 10 minutes away from my parents was taking the world by storm and had gripped a whole nation into a summer of cricket, which I'd never seen anything like that before. And the fact that it was England's first win in an Ashes series since the 1980s at home was absolutely, mind-blowing for me, who was a massive cricket fan, played cricket all the time during the summer. So yeah, Andrew Flintoff. And I think he won Sports Personality of the Year that particular year when England won the Ashes. But then as my swimming career kind of took off in 2008, it will always be Michael Phelps. And I was absolutely obsessed with the detail that got him to where he was and winning 8 gold medals at single games in Beijing. So as I'd gone through my life, I always had a sporting figure to look up to. And then it was funny, I kind of, as I'd gone through my life and gone through my journey, I ended up being a sporting role model for so many other people and so many people that I'd gone on to speak to after I'd swam at London. Which is not necessarily why I started, but I recognized that the sport and the platform that was given to me is something that I needed to use properly and appropriately, and I wanted to give back to communities and people that had given me so much support during the time of when I was swimming at a world level.
I mean, that's a fascinating angle here, the kind of role modeling and transitioning from being someone that aspired and looked up to others, and then actually when you make it and when you're in TeamGB, which we'll get to in a sec, you then become that role model or someone that people see on TV or watch in the pool. You mentioned Phelps there, and I always think of Thorpe as well before Phelps, but probably, like, if I think in the back of my mind, I think he's a big guy, he's got big hands, big feet, etc., etc. Now I'm downplaying how hard swimming is, and I know we all know how hard it is. But looking back, you as a child and growing up, is there anything that, looking back now, you could point to and say, okay, yeah, this guy, Jack Bridge, he's on his way, he's going to become a sports person? Or was it did you get there later in your sort of childhood? Was there something that was always destined to be for Jack Bridge?
I'm not sure that's necessarily the case. So for your listeners who don't know the ins and outs of my story, I actually suffer from a rare bleeding disorder called haemophilia. Now, haemophilia is a rare bleeding disorder. So basically, you have lots of different proteins in your blood. They do lots of different jobs. I'm missing a particular protein that allows my blood to clot properly. So if I cut myself, I'll form a scab like everybody else. But when I have a trauma or a bang or an injury, that's where things can become a little bit more complicated. And I've had certain, like, what we call bleeds or episodes where blood has seeped into the muscle, and the joint space. And I've developed osteoarthritis in my left arm, left knee, and right ankle. So as I'd gone through my life playing football, I used to have quite bad injuries on my right ankle. So then I'd hop around my left leg, which is why I've got bad right ankle, bad left knee. And my arm has been the way it is now since I was 3. And that's, fully enough, when I started swimming. And the consultant doctor who was looking after me at the time was a keen swimmer himself. And I remember, or how the story goes, that my parents relayed to me. When my mum told the doctor that I was starting to, was going to go swimming and starting to learn to swim, the doctor kind of just wrote me off there and then and said, oh, he's not going to be able to swim backstroke straight because he can't straighten his left arm. Now imagine, an experienced doctor of over 25 years working in his field, and he's writing off a 3-year-old. And little did that doctor know, sadly he's not here anymore. He wasn't there to watch me go and do my thing in London. But a little over 15 years later, I'm standing in front of a crowd of 17,500 people with over 2 million people watching around the world, about to swim the 100 meters backstroke for Great Britain at the London 2012 Paralympic Games. So not that I didn't know I was going to do that then, but I suppose it was always in the back of my mind that I wanted to prove people wrong. And there's been so many episodes as I've gone through my journey through my life where people have just written me off before I'd even had a chance to go. So I was always fighting, and I was always a fighter, and there was no greater satisfaction to me than proving someone wrong.
It's both fascinating, but also, it can be quite sad. I bet you, and maybe otherwise, that doctor probably just sort of made a throwaway comment or made it thoughtlessly, but doing so in front of a child and the parents of a child. As a father, you have the highest hopes for your children. To hear from a medical professional, oh no, there's no point in that. That must have been extremely dispiriting. Would you say, in a way, in a perverse way, that having people sort of do you down or say, oh, you can't do that, that's actually spurred you on and maybe made you more successful than you would have been if you hadn't been doubted? How would you say that plays into your psyche?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one thing it does provide you with is tough skin and resilience, which is something that I take into my job now. It's quite easy to take everything that a partner or someone in business says to you to heart when that might not necessarily be the case and what they meant in the first place, but it's something that story kind of just stayed in the back of my mind as I'd gone through my swimming career, and just wanting to prove people wrong. It was always something I was looking for. It was always looking for people to doubt me so that I could just go to them afterwards and not necessarily say, look how amazing I am or what I've done, but it was a satisfaction I knew that they'd seen me do something that they said I couldn't. And resilience is something that I feel my generation not necessarily lack, but it's something that's it's not something you can just learn or teach someone. It's something that's got to be experienced. And if I can pass an inspiration or pass some of the learnings I've had through my sporting career and into my life now with Formula One, I feel that's a better impression to make on someone than writing someone off, because you never know what someone's capable of doing until they actually go on and do it. And that was something that was taught to me and kind of instilled in me from a young age from my parents, because you have to be resilient. I was bullied as a child, with this condition that I've had to put up with. I had to go to school in a pram because I wasn't big enough or strong enough to go in crutches or push myself in a wheelchair. So you just end up building a thick skin for stuff and a resilience and a determination that you just can't you can't teach that to someone. It's just got to be lived and it's got to be learned and experienced.
That's moving, really moving stuff. And I'm really intrigued to hear more about resilience. We hear a lot from people. We've had, the likes of Mario Andretti on, but we've had people, Neil Coles, who is a presenter for many motorsports, but he's sort of traveling all the time. How do you keep the battery topped up? And resilience tends to come through from all the people that do exceptional things. You mentioned in the Paralympic Games in London 2012, and I managed to get to that, but unfortunately it wasn't the swimming. It was at Brands Hatch. They had the cycling. But you talked, I think, about 17,500 people there, 2 million people watching on. What was that like? Like, were you in the athletes' village? Like, did you meet some of the kind of other Paralympians from around the world? What was that experience like? And how were you? Only 18 at the time? You were quite young, weren't you?
Yeah, so I was only 18, and it was a mind-blowing experience. And as an 18-year-old, I feel like it's quite easy to get caught up in the moment, in the bubble. But my coach, Louise Graham, at the time, was someone who we got on so well. We knew how each other, we just bonded as soon as we met with each other, and she knew how I ticked, and I knew how she talked. So it was a really good relationship, and I was really grateful that British Swimming and Paralympics GB made her part of the team. She was part of the coaching staff. So I had my own personal coach who I worked with day to day as part of the coaching staff at London, and that was huge for me. It was a sounding board. It was someone to help me keep my feet grounded, and someone I knew who could mentally prepare me for what was about to come. The whole thing, the whole experience of London 2012, it was the team selection announcement. It was the team dinners beforehand. It was sponsor events. It was speaking and doing local events in and around Lancashire and Preston, and then it was the games itself. With all the drama and all the media and all the public facing stuff you have to do. And then afterwards, it's the open top bus tour. It's the invitation to sports personality of the year. It's this, it's that. So it's a constant, it's not just that kind of 2-week period in late August, September. It's a whole kind of 12, 18-month period where it takes over your life. And in the lead up to the games, I worked out that barring Sundays, I'd had about 300 days constantly of training before getting to that race on my main event, which was the 100 meters breaststroke on the 8th of September. And, my days were, I was up at 4:45 in the morning. I'd be in the pool at 4:30. I'd train 4:30 till 6:30. I'd be in the gym 6:30 till 8. I'd then get picked up and taken to school, be at school from 9 till 2, have to catch a bus home from school to then catch a train to Manchester at 2:45, be in Manchester for 3:30, be in the pool 4 till 6, have another gym session 6 till 7, have a yoga session 7 till 7:45, try and catch the 8 o'clock train home, be home for around 9, 9:15, try and get some homework done before 10 o'clock. And that was my day every single day for about 300 days before I swam at London. So it was an incredibly intense period of time. And you have to be so meticulous with everything you do, whether it be your diet, your time management, the way you train, your focus, your mental preparation, your balancing of school at the time as well. It was a hell of a lot for an 18-year-old to deal with. And I put like most of my success in Louise's hands, because she was able to navigate me through the difficulties and help me when to say no to things, and ultimately got my body in a physical state to go and perform on the grandest stage of them all, and come away with a fourth place finish, and smashing my own British record on the 100 meters breaststroke by over 2.5 seconds in the process. So yeah, an absolutely incredible period in my life. And one that gave me, like I said to you before, gave me that platform to go on to help other people within that haemophilia, that bleeding disorder community that I spoke about before, who had given me so much support and so much love as I, was going through my preparation for the games itself. And, being that inspiration and being that character and being that sole focus for someone to look up to as a 5 or 6-year-old, where I had no one to look up to, and because my doctor had already written me off, having someone there at the top of their game who'd gone through all the difficulties with my health and condition, to break through so many different barriers, and to be that inspiration for a kid who thought, kid and a family and a pet and a couple of parents who think their world has ended, to see someone who's gone through exactly what their son is going through at that point in time, to go and reach the highs of London 2012 and all the amazing things that came with it. Honestly, gives me more satisfaction than racing in London does, because I've helped them and been that sole figure that sadly I was lacking when I was their age.
Gosh, we'll talk in a bit about what you currently do now, but like why you aren't in, I don't know, screenplay writing, script writing, I don't know, like everything you just said, like it's resonated, it's incredibly moving, and it also makes me feel like I was huffing and puffing because I just got back from work at 8 and we're recording this. Oh God, I'm just so busy. But what you just described you did as a 18-year-old, I think I gave up this is going to age myself, I gave up my Saturday job at Littlewood so I could focus on my A-levels. Like what you've described is an incredible feat of productivity and resourcefulness, which I think is another common theme for the people we tend to have on the show. It's mind-blowing. So I want to steal some intellectual property here, which I tend to do with everyone. And please, you got to play along, I'm afraid. This is also going to make for fantastic podcast because it's completely audio and no visual. So tell me, you talked about breaststroke being your event in London 2012, smashing a British record by 2.5 seconds. That's like smashing a fastest lap in F1 by 2.5 seconds. It just seems like it never happens. It's incredible. What makes a good breaststroke? Jack, you've got to explain it over the airwaves.
Well, in swimming, we've got 4 main strokes. We have butterfly, backstroke, breaststroke, and front crawl or freestyle. And what's unique about breaststroke is it's the one stroke that you spend the least time in a streamlined position. So if you think about a Formula One car, it's a balance between downforce, and air efficiency to make sure that the car can slip through the air as fast as it can. And that's the same balance. So that's the same thing we try to do with breaststroke. With breaststroke being, you spend so little time in a streamlined position, you need to be powerful, you need to be strong in your upper chest and your thighs and your legs. So that when you aren't in that streamlined position, that when you're going through the strokes, you have to have enough power so that when you finally get into that streamlined position, you're moving through the water as fast as you possibly can because of all that power. So yeah, it's a strong upper body, strong core, strong legs, and it's all about maximizing that streamline ability. So making sure that when you're going through the water or going through your turns or starts or whatever it is, you're maximizing the time you're streamlined, because that's where you're moving fastest through the water. As soon as you break that, it's because you're starting to slow down. It's because you're starting to lose that speed where you need another speed bump. So that's when we put in another stroke. So for me, what was amazing about my mental preparation in the lead up to London was I knew my 100 meters race. So it's 2 lengths of an Olympic size swimming pool. I knew exactly what was going to happen as soon as the starting gun went off, because I used to be able to sit in a dark room with a towel over my head, close my eyes, and my coach, Louise, would go through the whole starting procedure. And in my mind, I just visualized myself doing these things. And I think I did it about 6 weeks before I was due to swim in London. And I went through every process, up on top of the blocks, shake off, wait for the whistle, wait for the starting gun. And then that was it, eyes closed. And when Louise started the stopwatch to go through the race, she started that on the whistle, the starting gun. And I went through my normal process of going through a race. So it was 23 strokes on the first length and 26 strokes on the way back. And I got within around 0.02 of a second of the time I actually did in the final at London. I think in the final I did a 1 minute 10.0, and I think I was like a 1 minute 10.02 or something like that. So I was that good at kind of focusing and visualizing on what I wanted to happen, and that was all through like mental visualization. And so it was just going through the process of be strong, be streamlined, be strong, be streamlined, and it was kind of like almost like a flow. And what we call riding the wave as we went through the race. And I'd never felt an easier race in terms of the fatigue after the races I'd done when I'd smashed that British record. It was almost like the easiest race. I was just swimming totally on adrenaline, which was, and mind-blowing how much preparation went into it and how focused I could be to get into that mind space of running through a whole race. But to answer your question on what makes a good breaststroker, it's being strong but streamlined.
I mean, 1 minute 10 seconds. So we're recording this not long after the Mexico Grand Prix. One lap of that track was about 1 minute 17. So I'm just trying to conceptualize how long you're going for. You talked about 23 up and 26 strokes the other way. Is that because like very marginally you're losing power? I'm just trying to equate this to a Formula One car.
Yeah,
why is it 26?
Well, so on 23 on the way there, because you're diving off a starting block. So you're super fast. So when you dive off a starting block, you dive into the water and you have all the momentum of gravity taking you through. Whereas when you turn at 50 meters, you've only got the power of your legs, but you're immediately hitting resistance with the water. So your strokes aren't going to be as long as they are on the way down. One, because of the resistance, but two, because of fatigue. So if you think about stroke rate, getting really technical now, your stroke rate tends to be quite high on the way back because of fatigue. So you're not, as we say, holding as much water. It's almost like wheel spinning. For an F1 analogy, on the way back, it's almost like as you get closer to the 100-meter mark, the end of the race, you're losing grip of the water. So your tires are dying out and you're starting to lose grip through the corner. It's the same thing with swimming. You're losing your touch with the water because you're so tired and your muscles are so fatigued. So yeah, that probably answers the question quite well, I think.
Gosh, my brain wants to go in all sorts of directions with analogies like what compound are your muscles, but let's move on. But we're actually segueing quite nicely because you do the Olympic Games in 2012. here we stand, it's 2022, and you've just sort of, I think, as far as my LinkedIn stalking will tell me, you've broken into Formula One this year. So can you describe that 10-year journey from the open top bus to working in the commercial partnerships team at F1?
Yes, I can. During London 2012, I was still studying my A-levels, did my A-levels over 3 years just to give me enough time to get all my studies in that I needed to get to university. Of course, my education at that point in time wasn't my sole focus. It was very much on my sport and maximizing the opportunities that swimming was going to provide for me. So I then applied so I didn't get very good results, I won't lie. My A-levels were pretty dire. But after London, my coach Louise moved up to Newcastle, and I just loved the way I worked with Louise. For one reason or another, it just seemed to click and it seemed to work. So I gave myself another 12 months at home in Preston, managed to go and get selected on a World Championships team where I finished 6th in the final. So a little bit off where I was in London, but I had a massive knee injury in the lead up to those championships. So that kind of held me back there. I then get an offer to go to Northumbria University in Newcastle, where they offered me a pretty nice scholarship. So I snapped that off with two hands, but it was on a course that was mainly aimed at people who were already in an occupation. It was like 1 day a week. It was a part-time degree. It's only 3 years, like a normal degree, but I don't have to go into uni 1 day a week, which was great on the one hand because it allowed me to train both in the gym and in the pool. But wasn't great because it just wasn't what I wanted to do. I was always fascinated, as soon as I'd gone through London, I was always fascinated with the business of sport, specifically around the sponsorship market. So I did that for 2 years and then decided that it wasn't for me. 2014, I made my last appearance for Great Britain at a major championships, at European Championships, came second as part of the 4x1 medley relay team. Again, I'd had chicken pox in the lead up to that game. Those championships, sorry. So wasn't the best preparation, but again, it was just so many things happening all at once: a change of environment, change of coach, and sadly, that was the last time I competed for Great Britain on the international stage. However, I moved on to the sport management course, sport business management, which I did over 4 years. I then kind of had surgery in 2015 on my ankle to try and help with some of the pain there, which I gave myself the summer of 2015 off. So I missed that major championship year. And then we were back to 2016, which is another Olympic year. I ended up missing the Rio team by less than half a second, which was absolutely crushing because I'd put in so much hard work and had to go through so much. And just to miss it by less than half a second was absolutely gutting. Now, for you Formula One fans, you know the difference between half a second is probably first and seventh in qualifying, something like that. Sometimes it's even less than that. But that's why we love high performance sport. It's those fine margins. It's the winner is obviously the people that hit the best times or whatever. So it is what it is. Missed that time by less than half a second and really struggled with it mentally. Had a few years where I just really struggled to understand the whole process of what I'd been through from 18 through to 22 or whatever it was at that point. Gone through relationships which had an impact on my mental health. So I really struggled, and my body was breaking down and letting me down at every avenue. So I decided to take 2016, 2017 off, which I decided to focus in on my studies. And the first couple of years, so I did year 1 and year 2 of my sports business management over 2 years. That was fine. But then actual year 2 of the course is where I really, really, really struggled. I was struggling to get grades up above like 55, 60s. And I remember going in to see my tutor at the time, and he pretty much gave me the biggest dressing down I'd had since I'd had a dressing down from Louise in the lead up to London. He just kind of threw the book at me and was like, you've experienced so much as an athlete. You've done this, you've done that. And you're so much more knowledgeable about the sport than you're able to get onto a piece of paper. So stop messing about and just work hard. So 2018 summer, I decided that I wasn't going to go home. I wasn't going to go home for the whole summer. I stayed up in Newcastle and stayed in the library and worked on all the areas that I was struggling with. So it was reading academic papers. It was practice writing pieces of work and coursework, and in preparation for my dissertation, which Michael supported me through the whole way after giving me this dressing down. So I think I was averaging, 55 going into my final year. I ended up scoring like an 85 in my third year, smashing my dissertation, and coming out with a first-class honours degree, which I still to this day don't have any kind of knowledge how that came about, because I just spent the whole year pretty much in the library just working solidly to get to the grade I got to. In the meantime, I'd struggled with my mental health, and in the December of 2018, a company approached me called Inspired Through Sport, which aimed to inspire the next generation of athletes and children coming through the ranks. And it was an opportunities to go and speak in schools and businesses about my story and what I'd done. And at this point, I always felt I was beaten by my own mental health issues. I wasn't swimming. I wasn't being very active. And this was another kick up my bum, so to say, to kind of prove that this kind of dark period where I'd gone through some bad times with my mental health and my body and stuff, I wasn't going to let that beat me. So I got back in the pool in 2018 and entered my first competition in 3 years since those Rio trials, and ended up winning a silver medal in international competition. Well, it wasn't representing Great Britain; it was representing Preston, my hometown. But it was an international standard competition, and to come away with a silver medal in the 50 meters freestyle was just a really nice end to that chapter of my life. And that's when I'd pretty much set my mind on the fact that I wanted to leave swimming there and just solely focus on the rest of my third year at uni, because I knew how important it would be going forward, and I wasn't going to make the millions that was sold to me back in 2011 or whatever, with the success of London. So I know I needed to focus in on my academic career and then onto a job to kind of help me feel fulfilled in what I do post swimming. So I then struggled to get into the sport industry, which is where I really wanted to be. So I had a final interview with Lancashire Cricket Club as a first job. I hadn't even graduated at this point, and I got down to the last two. They then told me I didn't have enough experience, which I'm still a bit miffed off about, because they knew that when I applied for the job themselves. So obviously it was something else, or they already had someone in mind. Whatever, didn't happen, but moved on. So I had a friend, or my brother-in-law, his auntie worked at a market research firm in Oxford. So I ended up getting a job there, which I was there until COVID hit in April time of 2020. Was then put on furlough until the September, where I was then let go because there was no promise of any support of the furlough scheme, whatever. So I spent September to December of 2020 freelancing, doing marketing jobs. I was even doing painting and decorating at one point, but it was a really difficult time for me. And then another friend of mine reached out who worked in the political space, in particular policy space. So I worked for a company called Public Policy Projects for 8 months or so. 7 months or so. And that was an amazing insight. So all the work I'd done with the Haemophilia Society and haemophilia charities, of which I'd gone and opened world conferences, speaking to crowds in front of 5,000 people, become an ambassador for the Haemophilia Society in the meantime. Their chief fundraiser had moved over to this job in the private sector with Public Policy Projects. So I moved over there and was partnership manager there for 7 months before a job at Prism Sport and Entertainment came up, who are part of the WPP conglomerate of agencies, specifically in sport marketing. So obviously jumped at that as soon as I was asked to apply. And that kind of gave me my first insight into the business of Formula One. So I worked on Castrol, Alpine, BAT's principal partnership with McLaren. And we also helped, the team that looked after that, looked after the interest of Aston Martin Lagonda in Team Silverstone. So I very much gave me a massive insight into the workings of partnership and partnership servicing and partnership management, which then kind of played nicely into my lap when the opportunity came out to apply for the partnership exec role at Formula One, which is where I now currently sit, which is headed up by Brandon Snow and Zara Al-Qudsi, and of course, Stefano Domenicali.
That's a huge way to, that's like a mic drop. 10 years. What a story. I mean, you talked at the beginning about, I've maybe on my social media, I've made it sound easier than it actually was. And you promised to give us some of the trials and tribulations. But what you talk about there through mental health, through going out on your own terms in swimming, through kind of finding your academic footing and really nailing that with a lot of perseverance, getting through to, the furlough, the impact that had on everybody, and on your early career to where you've got to now. And it sickens me to think that you're still not even 30. So it's an incredible story. So tell me, it seems like your job prior to F1 was almost F1 adjacent. Is that the sort of way that you would, you'd suggest if others are interested in moving towards F1, that's how they might get there? That's something that's adjacent to F1?
I'll be honest. I think working in Formula One and being a fan of Formula One are two separate things. And I don't want to be a downer on this conversation, but to be a fan of Formula One is not going to get you through the door. You're going to need to bring something else, something, whether it be your personality or experience or whatever it is. Being a fan and being interested in the sport is not enough, because we have an engagement of 1.5 billion people across the globe. So if you want to get into the industry, that is such a small percentage of people. They're looking for the best of the best. So what I'd say is to build, yes, it's all well and good being a fan, but if you become more of a fan than you are a business person, then you're not going to get a look in through an interview. So you just need to kind of be able to showcase your best in situations where, whether it be on your CV or your initial application or initial phone call with whoever you speak to, if that's what you want to do. But there's so many different facets to the business that I've only accessed it through a small route, whereas it was from a very much like a new business focused role at Prism, a previous role, to a very much a client servicing and contract managing role that I'm in now. But we have marketing teams, we have communication teams, we have race promotion teams, we have our comms teams, or teams that help out on the ground, whether it be our riggers or whether it be some of our partners who support us. So Tata Communications provide all our broadcasting services. So there's loads of different facets in, and just the way I've gone about it is, I wouldn't necessarily say it's traditional, but it's the way I think that I got through the door is being connected with the right people and already having some exposure to the industry. And I know it's incredibly hard to get that initial exposure, but you've got to be more than just a Max superfan or a Lewis superfan or whatever. You've got to bring something else to the table that they don't already have. And it's like I said, it's all well and good being a fan, but this is a business at the end of the day. And if we were all fans of the sport, then nothing would get done, because on a Sunday, we'd just sit there and watch the race. Now, when I go away to a race, I'm doing 40,000 steps a day from my office at the track to the Paddock Club to our broadcasting center, doing tours, doing paddock tours. Yes, it sounds glamorous, but it is really, really hard work. And it's not as glamorous as it seems if I'm not in the Paddock Club, I'm not sipping on champagne. And believe it or not, neither Stefano. Stefano is, his diary from 9 a.m. in the morning till 5:30 is just rammed full. So you see Stefano before every single race on the front of the grid. From that point, I don't think he goes and watches the races, because he has so much other stuff that needs to be done, or he has partner meetings, or he has meetings with other stakeholders that happen when he's free, and that's usually during the race. So working in Formula One is not, it's not all it seems from the outside. It's an incredibly glamorous sport and everything that comes with it. But when you're actually in Formula One and working in similar teams to mine, you are working really, really hard. Yes, we get to travel the world. Yes, that's nice. But it's a bloody hard job, and I won't lie to you.
I can absolutely imagine. So you talked about traveling the world. Does that mean that have you gone to all the races since you joined, or is it sort of, do you alternate? How does it work in terms of going to the Grand Prix?
Yeah, so in the commercial partnership team, we have a team of 9 of us who look after all 32 partners, split up between Zara, who is the head of our team, and then we've got 2 senior managers, 4 partnership managers, and we will have 3 partnership executives. And so we each get our own partners to look after. So ranging from our global, so our Rolexes, our Pirellis, our Emirates, our Aramcos, our Heinekens, to some of our lower ones like Santander, Tata, Workday, Hershevek, Paramount Plus. So they each get split. So obviously the higher the partner is in the global stack, or the partner stack, should I say, usually the more they get in terms of, or the more they've contributed to Formula One. So at the team of 9 of us, we split between the partners. So if it's Heineken's race, our Heineken lead will go and travel to each of the races. So we had Heineken as title partner in Mexico last weekend. They're also title in Brazil next week. But then it also depends. So usually the execs will go to around 8 or 9 of the races. And then partnership managers, senior partnership managers will probably go to about 9, 10 or 11, depending on who's activating where, which partner's a title partner and who they look after. And then our commercial director, Brandon, he usually goes to most of the races. I think he's hasn't been to a couple since he's come in, and obviously, but yeah, it just depends what's going on the ground. It's split out quite evenly between the team. But yeah, our focus obviously is making sure that what the partners kind of pay for, they get.
Oh, that makes sense. I'm feeling strong parallels between your schedule as an 18-year-old prepping for London 2012 and your schedule as soon as you hit the ground in the Grand Prix weekend.
So for example, so this year I've been to Silverstone, Austria, Belgium, Zandvoort, and I'm due to fly out to Brazil a week today. Actually, I've literally just taken off a week today to go to Sao Paulo. So my day will start at around 5:30. If I want to get a workout in, which I usually try to do before a race weekend whilst I'm away. It'll start at 5:30, 6 o'clock. Try and do a workout before 7. Get down for breakfast at 7, and then I'm at the track for 8:30, and then a full day at track. So if it's a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, that involves Thursday's setup day. So we make sure that everything with our partners are happy, so they've got all their accreditation and passes, and then we go into the Paddock Club to make sure that all their allocated space, is all sorted in the way they want it and the way they ask, and in some cases the way it is in their contract. And then on Friday, it's very much making sure that when the guests arrive, they're all happy, and that the guest and the partner leads are all happy with that their guests are having a great time. And then it's organising ambassador tours. So if we want David Coulthard to go and say hello to some partners, or we're going to do a paddock tour or a tour of our broadcasting centre. Those are all facilitated by our team. So like I said, it's 40,000 steps. And then on a Friday night, we usually take our global partners out for dinner. So yes, it sounds nice. It sounds glamorous to go out and have and share some time with our partners and spend some time with them where they're away from their guests and we can host them. I'm not getting to bed till 11:30, 12 o'clock sometimes, and then it's all over again Saturday morning. But one thing I'm grateful for is that the Saturday morning time before FP3 is it's an amazing time to catch up on the emails that you've missed from Thursday through to the end of play on Friday, and it's a good job just to kind of get some little jobs that you'd normally save for a Friday afternoon back in the office in London, just to kind of get those ticked off and clear before Sunday. And then usually Sunday everything should be done and fine. So it's very much on a Sunday, it's making sure that the guests arrive on time, they go through their experiences, if there's any final tours to do, but then we get to enjoy some time with the partners if some of them may have access to the grid. So then we do a grid walk on a Sunday afternoon, which is one of the privileges of the job. It was absolutely unbelievable. I remember my first race, I went to Austria at the Red Bull Ring, and I had no idea that at this point that our team used to do the grid walks. I just thought the partners had grid passes, they can just go. But Sam was like, no, we're going to walk them through the grid. And I remember going onto the grid for my first time in Austria, and I was just like literally pinching myself thinking, this is absolutely surreal. How have I, little Jack Bridge from Preston, ended up here in at the start of a Grand Prix. I'd only been in a job like 2 weeks, and I was on the grid within my first 2 weeks, which was absolutely unbelievable. So, that's why I say it's a privilege to be part of this team and privilege to be part of this sport as it goes through a huge change and a huge growth phase, which is really coming from our team. The way we service our partners and the way we're driving revenue for the business and the commerciality of the business is down to the work we've done with our partners already. That's what drives the value of these sponsorship deals, these race deals, because they see the value in how much exposure a Rolex or a Pirelli or Heineken or Aramco are getting. And it's just a super amazing, exciting, and exhilarating sport to be in as not only as a fan, but as somebody who actually works in the industry too.
I mean, here's a question for you, which is slightly off script. I feel a lot of intensity when I hear this. You've got the ups and the elation of getting on the grid, but you've got the 5:30 starts and the all the way through to midnight or however late. So little Jack Bridge from Preston, as you described yourself, how do you relax? How do you chill out? What's the downtime look like for you?
When I'm away, or just in general?
Oh, in general, I mean, because it feels like everything you do, you spent your summer getting up to speed on your third year of uni. You've nailed your Olympic dream. You've nailed this Formula One job.
Yeah.
Like, what's unwinding look like, or does it not happen that often?
So my girlfriend lives on the north coast, on the Norfolk coast, which this year has been an absolute God blessing. It has been honestly the most amazing time to get some time away from London. For anybody that lives in London, you know exactly what I mean, where you just enjoy time where you're not feeling like you're running at 100 million miles an hour all the time, and spending time here. So I like to game quite a lot. So the new Call of Duty came out last week, so I've been playing a little bit of that in my downtime in the evenings. But in all honesty, sometimes I'll go to bed thinking about what I've got to do tomorrow, or some of the stuff I've got to do for partners, or what I need to prep before I go to Brazil next week. But what I find is really helpful when I'm in London is taking the hour break I have in the office and doing a really hard workout and just lifting as heavy weights as I can, which kind of takes me back to my swimming and athletic career. It's a really good way for me to kind of get away from thinking about F1 for an hour and just throw some weights around, and just it's almost like a release valve. And I never feel stressed with this job. It's a lot to do, but I've been in worse situations. I've been in under more pressure previously than I have been now. Swimming in front of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince of Wales as he was then, or King Charles as he is now. That's more pressure, and wanting to perform in front of those guys than it is making sure that you've got an email sent by 9:30 on a Friday morning, whenever it is. So I deal with pressure really well. It's just I just like to go through processes, and as long as I follow the processes of what's right and what's correct and learn those processes to the best of my ability, then there's not a lot else I can do. And what's great is that the team I'm in now, we're not that we've known each other a long time. The whole team is relatively new over the past 12 months. We all work together really, really well. So I'm not worried if my partner, a Tata or a Santander, like they were in Mexico this weekend. If you haven't checked out their Santander X Global Challenge final award ceremony, which was filmed at the Mexico GP this weekend, go and have a look. I wasn't worried because I wasn't in Mexico. I knew that Libby, Josh, and Georgina, who were part of my team, I knew those guys were more than capable and had the tools available to go make sure that everything with that kind of partner activation was sorted. And that's what being part of a high performance team is. It's making sure that you can trust your partners, your friends, your colleagues to make sure that if you're not there, the standard doesn't drop. And it's the same for me. So if I've got to look after a Aramco, a Rolex, a Pirelli, or a Paramount Plus, or whoever it is, the standard never drops. And that's to be honest, that's come from Brandon, that's come from Zara, who set those standards. And that's why our partners love being part of Formula One, because of the standard they receive from us is a standard that you'd expect from the world's fastest growing established sport.
I'm imagining your team not just being a high performance team. It feels like there's this shared passion, this shared vision. The way you were describing the value that your team adds to Formula One, that driving the growth of the sport, and being responsible for that. It sounds like you're all bought in and all driving for that. You spoke. Go on, please.
Yeah, and it's our job to kind of, well, part of the revenue stream is all about retention as well. It can't just be new partners coming in all the time. It can't be us just going to new markets. It's about growing the value and making sure that those partners feel valued within the sport, because we're going to new markets, because we're bringing new partners in all the time. It's hard for those that feel established at the top to not feel like they're getting drowned out by the rest of the noise, but they get such a great service from us, and we are there day and night for them during a race weekend. We are there for whatever they need, and they recognize the value in that. And yes, there's always stuff we can do better, and that's as this team gets up to full strength. That's something we look to improve, and we improve on every single year. We have a massive feedback session at the end of the year where we look at all different facets of the business and say, what can we do better? And that's something that I did when I was a swimmer. So every time I didn't win a race, it was always a learning opportunity, and that's something that the team I've recognized since I've come into Formula One. That's something they're focused in on and trying to, as is the rest of the sports. Formula One's known as a very technical, innovative sport, and that's the same approach we take into everything we do. So our team, we're trying to find new ways to innovate activations to make sure that our partners stand out from the rest of the crowd. In a world where sponsorship and partnerships are so flooded with so many brands, how do we help our partners who have chosen to be part of this amazing sport? How do we help them stand out more than anybody else? And that starts with us and that partnership management team, and making sure that we connect the right dots from around the business to make sure that we're getting the maximum exposure for said brand, or we're giving the best experience to a partner's guests when they're in the Paddock Club, or during a Paddock tour, or doing a broadcast center tour, whatever it is. It's got to be of a standard that is fitting for the world's biggest established or fastest growing established sport.
The way you talk about that drive and that lessons learned and continuous improvement and that culture in F1, it fills me with a great deal of faith. And I hope that level of professionalism and hunger and self-reflection is something that we find across the entire sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't come from Zara and Brandon or the commercial team. That's what Stefano is embedded. His DNA is Formula One. Literally, if you cut Stefano in half, you'll see usually the red logo of Formula One, but also half of him will be probably Ferrari, but it is entrenched in Formula One, and everything he does, he wants to be the best at. He wants to be technically the best sport. He wants to be the best product for our fans to watch at home. We've got to be the most technically advanced when we're talking about our broadcasting capabilities, and we've got to be the best. Not just the greatest motorsport, because we already know we're the greatest motorsport, but what else can we bring to the party? So it's the Martin Garrix appearance in Mexico this weekend. It's Ed Sheeran on the grid. It's Brad Pitt on the grid. I know he got a bit of bad press because they didn't do Martin Brundle's interview, but it's attracting a new audience from all over the world. And, long may it continue. Hopefully we'll get into Africa in the next few years. Hopefully we'll go back to South Korea. Hopefully we'll get into to the Far East. And obviously, we've got Vegas coming next year, which at the minute is just looking like it's going to be one hell of a party. It's going to be absolutely unbelievable.
And on that note, and I'm conscious we've had a lot of your time, and I'm really grateful. As we move towards the end of the interview, we like to kind of have a bit more fun, be a bit more relaxed. You talked about a big party in Las Vegas. We play a game on the podcast called Taxi Dinner. I guess a play on a slightly ruder verb game, which we definitely won't play today. So taxi, dinner, avoid. And I'm conscious that you work for Formula One, so the avoid one might be tricky, and I'll let you have a cop-out answer if you want. So typically we play with just the current F1 grid, but you know what? I'm going to be generous because you mentioned David Coulthard. You can have any F1 driver ever. You have to pick one that's going to drive you to dinner, one you're going to have dinner with, and the other one, maybe not so much. So over to you. Taxi, dinner, avoid. Who are your 3 picks?
I think I'd like the Honey Badger to be my taxi driver. I think I'd like to pick the brains over dinner with Lewis Hamilton. And it's a tough. It's either Lewis Hamilton or Seb Vettel. Do you know what? Actually, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to go dinner with Sebastian Vettel, and I'm going to avoid Lance Stroll. And the less I can say about that, the better.
Okay, well, that's an off-air conversation to tease the listeners with. But no, thank you for playing along and giving us a straight answer. So look, we're coming towards the end, and we often give our guests a chance to give a final reflection. The story you've told in the last, say, 55 minutes has been incredible. From the age of 3, from when the doctor said, he'll never swim backstroke, all the way up to the present day, and the fantastic things you're doing today. So, usually it's someone's only had one career, and we say, tell us how to be a driver, or tell us how to be X. But just, have you got any general advice that you would give people about success, or about life, or about lessons that you've learned through these past years?
I think the biggest piece of advice I can give someone who wants to be successful is, no matter which room you're in, which environment, which situation you're in, to be truly successful, like natural gifts and natural talents aren't enough. You have to always be the hardest worker in the room. And if you showcase that to the best of your ability, and if you're the hardest worker in every room that you go into, you'll do okay. It's not guaranteed that you'll be a multimillionaire. You'll be a successful Formula One engineer. Won't turn you into Adrian Newey, but if you make sure that you do as much as you can and be the hardest worker in the room, whether that's time away from the sport, away from your studies or whatever it is. But I always had that in the back of my mind. You've got to be the hardest worker in the room, and it's quite a simple one. But it fits into so many different situations. If you want to be a driver, you've got to work on the physical side. So be the hardest worker in the gym, be the hardest worker in the sim, be the hardest worker in the car. If you're an engineer, it's make sure you're the hardest worker in your university class. It's make sure you're doing everything outside of your university class to give you the best opportunity when you turn up the next morning, that you're already ahead of everyone else. Being the hardest worker in the room. It's not just a throwaway statement. It's a lifestyle, and it's a way of working. And it's not easy. It's not easy. It's a really difficult path. But those that walk the difficult paths are usually the ones that come out smiling on the other side, because they've enjoyed the journey more than they enjoyed the destination.
And speaking of journey and destination, where's Jack Bridge going? Do you have any big dreams or anything specific you're looking ahead to?
Right now, so the past few years, as I explained on the pod, it's been a topsy-turvy employment career up to now, because I wasn't happy with where I wanted to be. As I'm sure you probably gathered, and all your guests have gathered listening to the podcast, I'm incredibly happy where I am at the minute. And I am looking very much forward to going to Brazil on Wednesday, a week today that we're recording this. And then I look forward to some nice holidays in December and January. I'm off to Dubai in January, which would be a nice opportunity to switch off and get ready for what I'm sure will be the greatest season that Formula One has ever seen in 2023.
Sales, incredible. So I'm gonna just throw you off balance here with a final question, which is of the most sincere importance of any question we ever ask on this podcast. We ask every single guest. The setup question is: I assume you like pizza. Is that right?
Yes.
Fantastic. So pizza, What do you think about pineapple on pizza or not? What's your verdict?
No pineapple on a pizza. No pineapple. Can't be having that. It just doesn't know. I don't like pineapple at the best of times, so if it's on a pizza, that makes it even worse.
And that's the quote.
Give me a pepperoni or chili pizza any day. But yeah, it's a no from me.
Okay, you joined the illustrious club that features Mario Andretti as well. Absolutely no pineapple on pizza. So congratulations. We have a range of answers.
An esteemed club.
Yes, an esteemed club. Exactly. Where can we find you before we shut down? Where can we find you? Anything you'd like to shout out before we go?
Okay, so you can find Jack Bridge on Twitter at swimmer_JB10, on Instagram at Bridgie94, and if you search Jack Bridge on LinkedIn, you should be able to find me quite easily. And all that is for content on sport, football, and everything Formula One.
Formula One. And to pick you up on a point you made earlier, of course I remember that Preston North End team that was knocking on the door, getting to the playoff final or semi-final over and over, and sadly not quite making it into that Premier League money. But maybe sometime soon. Who knows?
One day.
Well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure, Jack, to have you on the podcast. I hope the listeners have enjoyed it as much as I have. And I really look forward to hearing more about your story soon and seeing Formula One. Hopefully 2023 is the best season of Formula One ever. This has been your unusual co-host, F1 Blag. It's been a delight to have Paralympian and now employee of Formula One, Jack Bridge. This has been Stripping the Dipping, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.